In this country, vans don't only cater to big families or those who have a lot of cargo or people to haul. Given how unbearable traffic can get in the metro, a lot of people opt for a van in order to provide themselves with a comfortable yet ambient space. The van we're going to review today has been around for a while, but let's see if it still has what it takes to compete with some of the newer players. Presenting the Hyundai Starex Platinum. Known as the H1 or IMAX in other markets, the Starex has been around since 1997. This is the second generation model and probably the last one. Now I know there's the Hyundai Starex and a lot of people consider that to be the third generation model. However, it's hard to think of that as an evolution of this because aside from having a different nameplate, that one's front wheel drive while this is rear wheel drive. Despite receiving its last facelift only a few years ago, this body style dates back to 2007. But vans typically retain their same shape and style, so it really hasn't aged too bad. However, its age does become a bit evident through some of the exterior kit. For instance, you get halogen headlights and fog lamps, but at least you get LED DRLs. This huge grille also gets a lot of chrome treatment, and while I'm not a huge fan of chrome, I do like how fluidic it is. You'll see that some of the lines flow into the headlights, and that's a really nice touch. Well, what do you know? Along the side, you get even more chrome. Enough chrome to put your mother's cutlery set to shame. You get chrome around the windows and around the door handles. Even the rain visor is chrome, and that's really what sets the Platinum version apart. But aside from that, you also get an integrated stepboard, which is also functional. Now, the Starex rolls on 16-inch wheels, and it goes to show that they prioritize comfort over style, which is not a bad decision because this is a van after all. Now what I really love about this design is how the door rails integrated underneath the windows. Other vans have it run across the body and that's such a huge eyesore. This just gives it a cleaner look. At the back, it's a pretty standard affair. You get huge vertical taillights that are not LED. However, you do get a scratch guard and 4 proximity sensors plus a reverse camera. This tailgate is manually operated and it's not such a big deal when you open it, but closing it will require a bit more effort. Now you may be thinking, wow, there's hardly any cargo space, but think again because these seats can move forward. Now these seats move in 2 different stages. You can have it set here so you can accommodate third row passengers as well as some cargo, or if you want more cargo space and you're willing to ditch your third row passengers, you can move it all the way forwards to accommodate even more luggage. Now vans are really all about interior space, so let's see what that's like. Now I know 3-row SUVs are all the rave these days, but look at this. It's really hard to match the space you get in the third row of a van. I mean, you could really stretch out. Now granted, I have these seats all the way back, but even if you move it forward to accommodate some cargo, there's still plenty of space left. Let me show you. Okay, so locked into place, I still have inches of knee room and headroom, of course, so you can still accommodate passengers and cargo with no compromise to comfort. This can easily sit 3 adults comfortably, and you also get cup holders and individual air vents to ensure that the ride is the most pleasant experience. Now those third row seats are definitely a treat and are extremely comfortable, but if you want the full experience in riding business class, then this is the place to sit, because here you get VIP captain seats with built-in ottomans, and you can stretch all the way out. You can even move these seats further back and recline all the way. But I'm not going to do that because I might end up dozing off. But I also want to point out the fact that aside from all the space and all this comfort, this leather is really nice and soft, and it goes well with the rest of the interior. You also get these built-in headrest monitors and of course individual air vents. Now another nice touch here is that you get a low belt line with these huge windows, so you always have a really nice view of the road. And it's also good to see that these windows actually open, which will come in pretty handy if someone decides to pass gas. Or if you just want to experience fresh air. Now this is what really sets the Platinum version apart, because this is no longer just a people hauler. This is riding in luxury, because if this isn't luxurious, then I really don't know what is. Now in this country, a lot of these vans will be chauffeur driven, but that doesn't mean that the front seat occupants won't get a lot of the creature comforts, because these seats are equally comfortable and the leather here is just as soft. Now there's enough room here for 3 adults, but this also functions as a center console, which gives you some storage space and cup holders. Now this cockpit does start to show its age, but that's only because you don't get niceties or tech and features that you typically find in cars these days. For instance, the instrument cluster is purely analog, and you don't even get buttons on the steering wheel. Even the climate control system is purely manual. But at least you get this touchscreen, which comes standard with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And given how big this cockpit is, you will have to stretch a bit to operate some of the key functions, so those steering wheel buttons would have come in really handy. In any case, the steering wheel is also leather wrapped. And you can adjust it for tilt, but unfortunately it does not telescope. In any case, you get a nice commanding view of the road, and the gear lever is well within reach. I actually like the fact that sitting here doesn't exactly feel like you're sitting behind the wheel of a van. The driving position is kind of car-like. The only indication that you are sitting in a van are these large windows. And that's a welcome sight because again, you get a really nice commanding view of the road, which is critical for something this big. Now, even if you have to stretch out to operate the climate controls or the audio system, all the other buttons are well within reach. Now, included in the Platinum version, which you can get from this dealership, includes this rear view mirror, which has a built-in dash cam. This also displays the image of the backup camera. Now, in terms of storage, you really won't be left wanting because aside from getting the storage tray over here, you get cup holders here and here. You also get a dual glove box. So really, in terms of storage, you really can't ask for more. However, you will be left wanting when it comes to charge ports because all I see here is this 12-volt socket. But with all things considered, this is still a really nice place to be. Now, there are some hard plastics, but most of the materials are actually soft touch, including this dashboard and most of the touch points. But now that we've seen all the space and comfort that this provides, I think it's time to get this out on the road because that's where it really counts. Now, not all vans will be chauffeur-driven. In fact, some of them will be daily-driven. So it's important for manufacturers to realize that driving dynamics is still an important part of the whole package. And when it comes to that, you really can't expect an engaging drive from a van, but at the very least, it has to be very convenient to drive. And the Starex does that really well, because it really doesn't feel big to drive, despite its size. And you can attribute that to the visibility. The visibility is really good. But aside from giving you a nice commanding view of the road, this doesn't feel big to drive because it's actually very responsive to your inputs. And that's in terms of steering and power. Now under the hood, you get a 2.5-liter CRDi turbocharged engine, which pumps out 167 horsepower and 451 Newton meters of torque. And that's really more than enough to propel this thing because this actually feels very light. Now, it's made it to a 5-speed automatic transmission, which isn't the most modern transmission out there, but it still does a really good job because it's quick to respond to your throttle inputs and it downshifts when necessary. And under normal driving conditions, it also shifts very smoothly. Peak torque comes in as early as 2000 RPM, so this always feels light on its feet. And it's not like you buy a van to win any drag races at a stoplight. But the important thing is, it makes the van feel really light. So there's none of that fatigue associated with driving a big vehicle that feels so heavy. Now speaking of weight, the steering is more on the heavy side, but it isn't exhausting to drive. In fact, it actually gives pretty good feedback. And more importantly, it responds promptly to your steering inputs. And considering how big and heavy this thing is, you'd assume that getting this thing to stop will require a lot of effort. But even at speed, when you plant your foot on the brake pedal, it doesn't nosedive and it requires minimal effort to get this thing to stop. So again, it makes the car feel smaller than it actually is. But is this the kind of vehicle that you'll think twice about bringing to a mall or any place that has tight parking space? Well, despite its size, I really don't think it'll be an issue because the visibility is just so good. Now, in terms of ride comfort, the suspension is very compliant. It doesn't totally isolate you from the road's imperfections, but it does a really good job because the ride is never jarring and it's always pretty comfortable. especially if you're sitting at the back seat. NVH is also pretty good. Now you do hear the diesel engine, but it's never enough to be annoying. There is a bit of road noise, but there's hardly any wind noise, so that's a good thing, especially at high speed. So just to put things into perspective, between this and a PPV, this actually feels a lot better to drive. It just offers a level of refinement that a lot of PPVs cannot match. Now, I have a friend who owns a Starex amongst other vehicles, and the thing is, you'd think he'd only use the van if he needed to, meaning when he has to haul his whole family around or if he has to haul a lot of cargo. But he tends to use it even when he's driving alone, and that alone is a testament to how easy this thing is to drive, because he can always take the sedan out, but sometimes he chooses to use his Starex instead. This is definitely something you can use on a daily basis, or even if you take this on a long trip out of town with the whole family. And you won't feel penalized for being the designated driver, because even if the second row seats are the best seats in the house, I really wouldn't mind sitting here or driving this thing for a long period of time.
You can get the Hyundai Starex Platinum from Hyundai Manila Bay for only 2,938,000 pesos. The price may seem steep, but you might be surprised by how much they're willing to take off the SRP. You can send me an email or contact the numbers on screen to find out more about the huge discounts currently on offer. Nothing provides better space and practicality than a van. And if you want a van that's easy to use and drive, then you should look no further. There may be more modern options out there, but the Starex is the last example of a vehicle that isn't overwhelmed with electronics. It's also hard to dismiss the value that comes with something that's tried and tested.